Rory Mcilroy noticed it during his morning routine. The silver Rolex watch he'd left on his nightstand was slightly out of place. Nothing to worry about, he thought, attributing it to his own absent-mindedness after returning from the PGA tournament in Phoenix. But over the following weeks, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Small valuables repositioned, his drawer of collectible cufflinks slightly ajar, and most noticeably, his grandmother's antique brooch had vanished entirely. "Elena!" Rory called out, hearing the familiar sound of the vacuum cleaner downstairs in his Palm Beach estate. The machine stopped, and footsteps approached. "Yes, Mr. McIlroy?" Elena Vasquez stood in the doorway, her usual calm demeanor replaced with something more guarded. Dark circles framed her eyes, and her hand trembled slightly as she pushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "Have you seen my grandmother's brooch? The emerald one that was on my dresser?" Elena's eyes widened momentarily before she composed herself. "No, sir. Perhaps you moved it before your trip? I'll keep an eye out while cleaning today." As she retreated hastily, Rory felt a twinge of unease. Elena had been his housekeeper for 3 years, reliable, thorough, and honest. She'd never given him reason to doubt her before, yet something had changed in the past month. She'd switched her schedule multiple times, occasionally appearing with unexplained bruises, and answering phone calls in hushed, urgent whispers. That evening, as Rory reviewed security footage on his laptop, something he'd never imagined doing to monitor his own staff, he noticed Elena lingering near his study, glancing nervously over her shoulder before slipping something into her pocket. His heart sank. The trust he'd built with her over the years seemed to crumble in an instant. The next morning, after a restless night, Rory made his decision. When Elena's silver Honda pulled out of his driveway at 5:30 p.m., he followed at a careful distance in his least conspicuous vehicle, a black Range Rover still too luxurious for true anonymity. As a professional athlete whose face appeared regularly on Sports Channel, Rory pulled his cap low and kept sunglasses on, feeling both ridiculous and increasingly concerned. What had driven his trusted housekeeper to theft, and why couldn't he shake the feeling that something far more troubling was at play? The humid Florida air felt oppressive as Rory followed Elena's Honda through Palm Beach's exclusive neighborhood and across the bridge into West Palm Beach. The landscape gradually transformed from pristine mansions to neglected apartment complexes plastered with Spanish-language advertisements and security bars on windows. Elena's car finally turned into the parking lot of a dingy 3-story motel called the Palmetto Inn, its neon sign flickering despite the daylight. Rory parked across the street, heart pounding. This wasn't mere curiosity anymore. What legitimate reason would Elena have for coming to this? Through his windshield, he watched her exit her car, clutching her purse tightly against her body, eyes darting around the parking lot before she ascended the external staircase to the second floor. She knocked on room 217, and the door opened immediately. A man with a stocky build and sleeve tattoos gestured her inside. Before the door closed, Rory glimpsed Elena reluctantly reaching into her purse, producing what looked like his grandmother's emerald brooch. "Damn it," Rory muttered, reaching for his phone to call the police. But he hesitated. The interaction he'd witnessed didn't look like a simple fence operation for stolen goods. Elena's body language spoke of fear, not partnership. She'd emerged from the room minutes later, wiping tears from her face before checking her phone with visible anxiety. Instead of returning to her car, Elena walked to the ice machine alcove and made a call, her back pressed against the wall as if seeking escape. Rory cracked his window to catch fragments of her conversation. "Yes, I gave him what he asked for. No, please, I need more time. My sister and Miguel, they're still—" Her voice broke. "How much more before they're safe? You promised." The transformation in her face as she listened to the response chilled Rory. Pure terror. Elena slid down the wall until she was crouched on the ground, her free hand covering her mouth to stifle sobs. When she finally returned to her car, Rory didn't immediately follow. The pieces were rearranging themselves in his mind. Elena wasn't stealing because she wanted to. She was being forced to. His anger at the potential betrayal transformed into concern. This wasn't about his missing valuables. It was about the woman who had diligently cared for his home for years, now caught in something that had her terrified. As Elena's car disappeared around the corner, Rory pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Mike, it's Rory. I need that favor you offered. The discreet investigation. It's about someone who works for me, and I think she's in serious trouble." 3 days later, Rory sat across from Mike Lawson in a private booth at an unremarkable diner off I-95. Mike, a former FBI agent who now ran a private investigation firm, slid a manila folder across the table. "It's worse than you thought," Mike said, his weathered face grim. "Elena Vasquez isn't even her real name. She's Maria Elena Delgado, from a small town outside San Salvador. Came to the States 5 years ago on a tourist visa and never left." Rory flipped through the documentation, pausing at a photograph of Elena with a younger woman who shared her features and a small boy, maybe 7 years old. "Her sister and nephew," Mike confirmed. "They tried to cross the border 8 months ago, but got separated from their coyote. Ended up in the hands of the Vega cartel's human trafficking network." Rory's stomach tightened. "And the man at the motel? Javier Cortez, local enforcer for the Vegas. He's using Elena to access valuables from wealthy homes. You're not the first employer she's stolen from, but you might be the only one who noticed without immediately firing her and calling the cops." The waitress refilled their coffee cups. Once she was out of earshot, Mike continued. "The Vegas operate a sophisticated network. They identify undocumented workers with access to wealthy homes, then leverage family members as collateral. Elena's been paying them for months, hoping they'll release her sister and nephew. But that's not how it works. They'll keep extorting her until she gets caught or has nothing left to give." Rory stared at the photos spread before him. Surveillance images of Cortez meeting with other suspected cartel members, grainy pictures of what appeared to be a compound in rural Florida where migrants were allegedly held. "There's more," Mike said, lowering his voice. "Elena's just one piece. The Vegas have housekeepers and gardeners working in at least 24 mansions across Palm Beach County. They're using them as unwilling scouts for potential burglaries, sources of valuables, and occasionally for identity theft operations." "Jeez," Rory muttered. "Have you taken this to the authorities?" Mike's expression hardened. "These people have connections. Last time someone tried building a case, key witnesses disappeared, and a junior ICE agent ended up dead in a ditch. This operation is protected." Rory leaned back, the weight of the situation sinking in. What had started with a missing brooch had uncovered a criminal enterprise that preyed on the vulnerable and corrupted law enforcement. And caught in the middle was the woman who had carefully maintained his home for years, desperately trying to save her family. "I need to talk to her," Rory decided. "Carefully," Mike warned. "If the Vegas think she's exposed them, her family is as good as dead. And truthfully, so is she." As Rory drove home, the faces from the file haunted him. Elena's sister with hollow eyes, the young nephew who should be playing soccer instead of being used as leverage by criminals. The luxury homes he passed now held different shadows. Behind how many of these pristine facades were similar stories playing out, invisible to the privileged inhabitants? His resolve hardened. Professional golfers were supposed to have steady hands under pressure. It was time to put that skill to use beyond the course. The following morning, Rory canceled his practice session and waited in his kitchen until Elena arrived. The moment she entered, he could see she knew something had changed. Her eyes darted to the security cameras he'd never bothered to hide. "Elena," he said gently. "Or should I call you Maria?" She froze, cleaning supplies clutched to her chest, a shield. For a moment, Rory thought she might run. Instead, her shoulders slumped in defeat. "You know," she whispered. "I followed you to the Palmetto Inn," Rory admitted, "and I hired someone to investigate. I know about your sister and nephew, about the Vegas, about Cortez." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Are you going to call immigration?" Rory gestured to the kitchen table. "Please sit. I want to help you." Her laugh was bitter. "No one can help me, Mr. McIlroy. You don't understand what these people are capable of." "I'm starting to," he said, "and I understand you've been stealing to protect your family. The brooch, the cufflinks." "I'm sorry," she interrupted, tears flowing freely now. "I never wanted to steal from you. You've been kind to me, always fair. But they have Miguel. He's only 7. And Lucia," her voice broke. "They send me videos sometimes to make sure I keep cooperating." Rory slid his phone across the table. "Show me." "Aight?" After a moment's hesitation, Elena opened a messaging app and handed the phone back. The video showed a woman and child in a squalid room, the woman's face bruised, the boy's eyes vacant with fear. When was this sent? 2 days ago. They moved them between locations. Sometimes a compound in the Everglades, sometimes locked apartments in Miami. Elena's hands trembled. I've given them almost $30,000 in cash and valuables. They keep promising it's almost enough, but there's always more. Rory took a deep breath. I have connections with the FBI, people who specialize in human trafficking cases. They can help. No! Elena's panic was immediate. The Vegas have people inside law enforcement. If they suspect, they'll kill Lucia and Miguel immediately. Please, Mr. McIlroy, I'll pay you back somehow for what I've taken. Just don't go to the authorities. There are good people I trust, Rory insisted. But we'll need evidence, solid proof that can't be ignored or buried. For hours they talked, Elena revealing the extent of the operation, names of other housekeepers and gardeners in similar situations, locations where she'd met handlers, banking details from wire transfers she'd been forced to make. Rory recorded everything, increasingly stunned by the sophisticated criminal enterprise operating in plain sight among America's wealthiest community. If I help you gather evidence, Elena finally asked, can you promise they'll rescue my family first, before arrests begin? Once the Vegas know they've been exposed, Rory met her gaze steadily. I promise I'll make that the priority. No raids, no arrests until Lucia and Miguel are safe. As Elena left that evening, her posture straightened with the first glimmer of hope she'd shown in months. Rory immediately called Mike, who connected him with Catherine Perez, an FBI agent specializing in human trafficking who'd been building a case against the Vegas for years. We need a plan that prioritizes extracting the hostages before the network knows we're coming, Rory explained. That's not standard procedure, Agent Perez warned. Then make an exception, Rory replied, or I'll use every connection and resource I have to make this a media circus the FBI can't ignore. The silence on the other end lasted several seconds before Agent Perez responded. I've been hunting these monsters for 3 years. If your housekeeper can help us locate their holding sites and identify corrupted officials, I'll make it happen. But you both need to understand the risk. Rory thought of Elena's tearful determination, of the vacant eyes of the young boy in the video. We understand, he said. When can we start? Dawn broke over the Everglades as Rory sat in an unmarked SUV beside Agent Perez, watching live thermal imaging from drones circling above a compound 8 miles from the nearest paved road. 4 weeks of careful intelligence gathering had led to this moment, identifying the location where Elena's sister and nephew, along with 11 other hostages, were being held. Team 1 is in position, crackled a voice over the secure radio. Awaiting your command. Rory glanced at Elena in the back seat, her face drawn with fear and hope. The plan had evolved over the past month, Elena continuing her reluctant cooperation with the Vegas, while secretly working with the FBI, planting tracking devices in packages she delivered, recording conversations, and identifying corrupt officials within local law enforcement. The network they'd uncovered was staggering. Over 40 victims forced to steal from wealthy homes across 3 counties, their families held as insurance, and protection from at least 7 corrupt officials, ranging from local police to a senior immigration officer. All teams execute Operation Sanctuary, Agent Perez commanded. Remember, hostage safety is priority 1. Through thermal imaging, they watched as FBI tactical teams converged on the compound from multiple directions. The operation was silent and swift. No sirens, no helicopters, nothing to alert Vegas associates monitoring police channel. 17 minutes later, the radio crackled again. Compound secure. 14 hostages recovered, all alive. Elena's sob of relief filled the... Agent Perez turned and nodded to another agent who opened the SUV door. Let's go. They're bringing them out now. Dirty. Rory remained in the vehicle, watching as Elena ran toward the procession of people being escorted from the compound. The reunion between Elena, her sister, and nephew unfolded in a fierce embrace that needed no words. After giving them a moment, medical personnel guided them toward waiting ambulances for evaluation. Agent Perez returned to the SUV. Simultaneous operations are underway at 3 other locations. We're rolling up the entire network before word spreads. She glanced at Rory. Your resources and influence made this possible. Many of these people would have disappeared forever otherwise. Later that afternoon, as Rory sat in the waiting room of a secure medical facility where the rescued hostages were being treated, he reflected on how dramatically his life had changed in the weeks since he'd first noticed his missing brooch. The newspapers would soon carry headlines about the trafficking ring, though his role would remain anonymous at his insistence. Elena approached, her eyes red but clear, her nephew clinging to her hand. "Miguel wanted to meet you," she said softly. "I told him you're the reason we're together again." The boy looked up with solemn eyes. "Thank you, sir." Rory knelt to the child's level. "You're very brave, Miguel. All of you are." "What happens now?" Elena asked. The relief of rescue giving way to uncertainty about their future. "Agent Perez is arranging special visas for everyone rescued today," Rory explained. "As witnesses in a federal trafficking case, you'll have protected status. And when you're ready," he hesitated, "my foundation is establishing a program to help families like yours rebuild. Education, housing, legal support. If you're willing, I'd like you to help run it. Your experience could help others." Elena's expression transformed with dawning possibility. "You would trust me? After I stole from you?" "You never had a choice," Rory said simply, "but now you do." As they walked together toward the future, uncertain but full of hope, Rory understood that sometimes the most significant journeys begin with the smallest observation: a misplaced watch, a changed schedule, the courage to look deeper when something feels wrong. In his world of privilege and golf tournaments, he'd stumbled upon an invisible tragedy playing out in plain sight. And in doing so, he'd discovered something more valuable than any trophy: the power of seeing people's struggles beneath the surface, and the responsibility that comes with that vision. The emerald brooch was never recovered. Rory didn't care. Some treasures, once lost, reveal greater ones in their absence.